Welcome to Undercurrents of Romance, the show that celebrates every subgenre of romantic fiction. In each episode, I peel back the layers of your favorite love stories and chat with the talented authors who bring them to life. I'm your host, Tracey Devlyn. Now, let's dive in with today's guest. Hello, Romantics. I'm here with USA Today bestselling author Alicia Thompson to talk about her new release, Never Been Shipped. Welcome to the show, Alicia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. I spent a little bit of time on your website and noticed that you consider yourself a super fan of Paramore. And I was just curious how you know when you've reached super fan status for a band.
Well, I mean, not that I have a chip on my shoulder or anything, but Ticketmaster verified surely did not acknowledge my super fan status. It was kind of hard to get last time I tried, but to me, like I've seen them many times live. Like I actually can't even tell you how many times I've seen them. I've seen them out of town. I've seen them in New York. I've seen them in California. I've seen them in Texas. I've seen them in Atlanta. I've seen them on a cruise ship, which, if you're familiar with Never Been Shipped,
Ah,
you'll see some of the inspiration.
yeah.
Um, I have listened obsessively to all their songs. I'm kind of day and date on anything they come out with. And I just have nothing but love and appreciation in my heart for them. Like, I want them to do whatever they creatively want to do. And I am just supportive of whatever that is.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, I can certainly see why you consider yourself a super fan of that band. That's great. Well, as you mentioned, music plays and a ship plays a big part in this novel, which we'll get to in just a few minutes here. But first, tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing journey, and just whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah. Let's see. I mean, I've been writing since I was a kid, and when I was in high school, I was really into Harlequin Presents romance novels. My mom would get those subscription boxes,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would just like pour over, every one that came in. Lynn Grant,
Mm-hmm.
Kathy Williams, and Allison Fraser was kind of my personal favorite author of those. And so when I was in high school, I got it into my head. I was like, I could do this. I could write a romance novel. And so I really studied it. Like I made all these notes about like books and like where in the book, this event happened. I basically created my own beat sheet, although I didn't know that that's what I was doing at the time. So I kind of figured like, oh, they usually, have sex around chapter 7, and they usually have a breakup around chapter 10, and then they, whatever. And so I wrote a couple of Harlequin Presents novels that I sent away to them, like, packaged up with rubber bands and mailed them off to the UK, had to go to the post office and everything. Um, and yeah, I mean, so I kind of have always been really into romance. I've always been into writing, and my career, without getting too in the weeds about it, it's been a pretty long journey because I published some books, actually YA and children's books, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And then one thing about publishing that I'm sure, as a writer, but I definitely did
Yeah,
not know when I was new to it, is that once you're kind of in the club, it doesn't mean you get to stay in the club. Like,
this
you're
is
kind of
true.
constantly constantly fighting for your right to, like, be in the
Yes.
club. And that was something that I learned to my chilling chagrin when all of a sudden, I wasn't selling any other books and nothing else was coming out. So I had a pretty long time, like a 10-year gap where I was writing and I was, I had an agent and I was putting things on sub and I was doing all the stuff you're supposed to do, but I felt very alone and I felt very kind of left behind. And I put a lot
Mm,
of those feelings into Never Been Shipped, actually, because I put a lot of feelings of what is it like to create something and feel like you're kind of on top of the world, like you've made it. Um,
yeah.
and then to kind of have this period where you're like, oh, I didn't, or it was,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
that feeling of like it was a failure, or
Hmm.
um, so yeah, so it's been kind of a long
Yeah.
journey, but I'm obviously, grateful to be where I am now, and it was really cathartic to write about it in the book.
No, that's great. Well, it's a wonderful story, and I can, now that you're saying that, I felt it when I was reading the book, but I think that um, like I said, now that you say that, I feel like there's even kind of a deeper sense of kind of that not abandonment, but there is a little bit of that. John, the love interest, and I think some of the other band members felt that a little bit, but just that, they were at the top of their game, and then something happens, which, I won't spoil it, and then they're all just kind of struggling, and trying to figure out their new place in life, right? And then
Yeah.
this is, several years later, and some have figured it out, and some still haven't figured it out, and so that now that you say that, all of that has a lot more of a deeper meaning to me as a reader. So that's
Yeah.
great. Thank you for sharing that. I know that that's a hard thing to go through. I went through a period of that myself, and it is not fun to go through. So I'm very, very happy that you're back, and you've given us this amazing story. Um, this is audio only, but for the image that'll show up on both the podcasts and for YouTube, there will be an image of the book cover on there so people will be able to see it.
Mhm.
So as you can tell from the cover illustration and the book title itself, and we might have hinted about it a little bit earlier, which is just the title is just incredibly catchy, by the way. We can talk about that as far as did you come up with that, or is that you and your publisher together, how that all worked out? But the book itself, it takes place on a ship, a cruise ship to be very specific. What can you tell us about this story? Where did the inspiration to put a broken band on a 5-day cruise come from?
Yeah, I mean, it was a mixture of things. So, like I said, I did go on these Paramore cruises. And so I just, it was such a fun experience. And I always wanted to write something in that kind of milieu, and I never knew what it would be. Um, but I just had such good memories from that time. And then I actually wrote a romance that came out in 2023 called With Love from Cold World. And that is a book where John is a side character in that book. And
Okay,
so
okay.
even then, I kind of knew that I wanted to write his story. Like I planted a couple little things. Like you find out that he was in this band and that he had a relationship, or well, you don't know what the relationship was, but you know that he was, close with the lead singer Micah, and that he doesn't like to talk about it, and that
Mm,
they had this hit, if only, that he still makes money off of, but he's not really in a band, anymore, just like little kind of side projects here and there.
yeah.
And so I planted all those seeds, and at the time, I knew I wanted to write the full book for John at some point, but I didn't fully know what it was. Um, and then I do think that, a lot of my feelings about kind of creativity and the intersection of like art and business, because
Hmm.
you're putting so much personal stuff when you're writing a book. You're putting, so much of yourself into it and so much emotional stuff. But at the end of the day, it is a business. They're selling a product.
Yeah.
These are items on a shelf. Like you said, a catchy title, a catchy cover. Um, your publisher has a lot to do with like, does the book get good placement, or stores carrying it? And it can be so hard to navigate
Hmm.
all of that stuff and to not to be proud of it, but also to not like make it your whole identity or your whole life, because that can be
Hmm.
very dangerous. So I think kind of a mixture of all this stuff was part of what I was thinking about when I was coming up with Never Been Shipped, which by the
Yeah.
way is a title I did come up with myself, and I'm very proud of myself for it.
You should be. It's great. I mean, it's just perfect. I really love it.
I just feel like pun titles are kind of catchy in romance right now, and
Hmm.
I feel self-conscious about the fact that I don't think I'm very good at puns, and so I always find it hard
I'm
to
not
come up
either.
with titles like that. Like I feel like I can talk to friends and they'll brainstorm like 10 different catchy, like
Yeah.
fun titles. And meanwhile, I'm still stuck at like square one. I can't think of a single one. So when I thought of Never Been Shipped for this book, which obviously has a couple different meanings to it, I was just so pleased with myself. I was so happy and
Yeah.
happy
No,
that
it's
they
great.
didn't keep it.
And I'm right there with you on the puns. If I had to come up with something like that, I just don't know if I could and have it actually relate to the story.
I know.
So in the novel, there is a lot of references to music and just how bands work together and just, like tuning up their instruments and things like that. A lot of lingo there. And I was really curious, do you have a musical background or do you know somebody closely who has a musical background, or was this just amazing research that you put into this book?
I mean, it was kind of a mixture of several different things. So my husband is a musician and he's played guitar and bass and, he plays a lot of different instruments. Um, we actually met, he was a guitarist in a band, in a punk band, and I was like 16, 15 years old. Um, going and watching his punk band play at
Yeah.
this local little record store. So our musical stuff kind of goes way back. So he was very helpful. We actually had a lot of conversations about this book that are kind of some of my favorite personal memories around it, where like we'd bike up to a place to go eat lunch and I would just ask him questions about like chord structures and recording and what do you think they would do for this and what do you think they would do for that. And it was really fun and really rewarding. And then I also play guitar, but like very very minimally. Like I almost don't even feel like saying that I play guitar because it's so minimally. But even that like little bit does give me some sense of
Mhm.
um like what it might be like, or just the challenges of like playing guitar and singing at the same time, which I'm frankly in awe that people can do it all because I cannot do two things at once like that. And then I did a lot of research, just like listening to podcasts and interviews. And in general, I love music. Like I have a newsletter where I talk about a song each week, and it's usually about other stuff. It's not really about the song, but called The Same Songs Over and Over. And so music has just always been something I've been really into. So the research for that part of it was kind of not hard to do because it's just stuff
Yeah.
I'm interested in anyway.
Yeah, nice, nice. It was great. I learned a lot, that's for sure. And it's not real heavy. You found the right balance, but it was just really neat to just get into their minds and you kind of like you felt like you were part of the band whenever they were talking at certain points during the story, and so it's really really cool.
Thank you.
So yeah, you bet. So I loved John's transformation, and it's really interesting that you said that he was in another book and that you wanted to, for him to have his own story here, because at the beginning of it, he felt like he was still very, very much, although he has good friends, his housemates, but he still feels, to me as a reader, very much in his shell.
Mhm.
And I liked how you really kind of cracked him out of that shell by the end. Did you find that difficult, or are you one of those folks who kind of have it all planned out, or did it just kind of organically happen during the drafting?
Well, on the one hand, this book I had to plan out more than I maybe do sometimes for other books just because of the schedule of the cruise. Like there's so much stuff about, what happens night 1, what happens night 2, how is that going to relate to the plot point, between their relationship.
Yeah.
And so that required a little bit of like some intricacy and some planning. But generally, I just kind of let it unfold. And a big thing that I thought about with John, even when I wrote him in the other book, he just was a character that always stood out to me as having kind of more to say than what he was saying in that book. And a big part of his personality there, where he's obviously just a side character, is that he's very much the kind of the strong, silent type where he doesn't talk a lot, but when he talks, people listen because he's a pretty thoughtful guy. And you
Hmm.
kind of get the impression like he must have thought about this if he's saying something about it. And he's very like non-confrontational, but he's just going to kind of gently ask some questions, and you get the impression that um, he's just put a lot of consideration into what he's saying. And then one thing I find very beautiful about romance, both in real life and in books, is I think sometimes there's another person that can really help unlock parts of you or help like you become just kind of a better version of yourself. And so, not that John needed Micah to get out of his shell per se. Like, I think he, is his own person. But I do think that losing his friendship with her was part of
Mm,
what put him in that shell in the first place, and I do think that reconnecting with her was a big part of, breaking back out of
mm.
it. And so that was kind of a crucial part to me with their relationship.
Yeah, I enjoyed the parts where we were in Micah's point of view and she was interpreting his body language and then you would in the next scene you would get all of what he was thinking about and going through and everything and I think she even said it in the story at one point about he's very expressive just in the way that he looks at you and I felt that his just his body language and his expressions and his looks conveyed so much that he didn't really have to say much.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think especially, the vibe of, like, they were best childhood friends to bandmates to estranged friends and bandmates, and now
Mm,
they're kind of meeting back up again. I just think there's so much potential there for tension and for, like you're saying, like, trying to kind of read the other person. Being like,
mm,
on the one hand, I feel like you're somebody who I know better than anyone else. Like, I know you so well. I know all of your tells. I know all of your, your deepest fears and your anxieties. And I was there, when some of this stuff was
yeah.
created. But on the other hand, I don't know you now. It's been so long since I've seen you, and I don't know what you might be thinking or feeling about me. And so there's just a lot of, tension around that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I like to dive into on this show is finding the story's undercurrent with the author. It's that second beating heart of the story that tends to flow beneath the lover's journey. What undercurrent is flowing beneath Micah and John's story, do you think? And there could be several.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record and keep going back to the creativity stuff, but that was definitely a very important part to me was this idea of like, on the one hand, if you put yourself out there, and this goes for love, it goes for creative, work, it goes for a lot of things. If you put yourself out there, it is very vulnerable and you are opening yourself up to hurt. You're almost guaranteeing
Mm,
that you will be hurt. Because if you put out, a book, you're going to get rejections, you're going to get bad reviews, you're going to get, just whatever that's going to make you feel bad. But then on the other hand, if you don't put it out there, like, that's also hurting you in another way. Um,
yeah.
and so that was something that I thought about a lot with them, both with their relationship, but then also with their music. And
Mhm.
another thing about music that I think is so beautiful is that you can express so many things that sometimes you can't put into words. And so there was a lot in this book too. Another undercurrent was kind of the things that are left unsaid, the things that we just don't always express, but that we feel very strongly.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
how to kind of get the bravery and, the vulnerability to express those things and to say them.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. Just switching gears a little bit here, I'd like to ask the authors to share with us two or three tropes in the story that readers can look forward to when they're reading.
Um, Tropes, let's see. So definitely like friends to lovers, kind of friends,
Hmm.
like I said, estranged friends to lovers, but it's there. Forced proximity, because they're obviously on this cruise ship.
Yeah.
They have a very kind of tight space, tight timeline. He falls first, but like he falls like way first.
Yeah.
Um, And then there's just some micro tropes that I really like. Like they're like kind of little things that I like. For example, when when someone just sleeps better when the other person is there, I always think
Yeah.
that's very romantic.
Yeah. That's
Like that
cool.
is also in the book.
Yeah. No, I like that. Yeah, I like
I'm
that
sure
one
I'll think
too.
of others like after that. I'm like, this was so obvious. I can't believe I didn't think about it.
No, that's fine. Just yeah, just whatever the two or three are the biggest ones that just pop off the top of your head is just fine. Just fine. Have Can you give us a recommendation about a romance book that you've read recently that you would recommend and maybe why?
Yeah, I mean, the danger is almost just like I can't take up too much of your time telling like every single one because
No, just
I've read so
one's
many really
fine.
good books.
Yeah.
Um, so another music romance that's coming out at the end of July that I've been talking about a lot is August Lane by Regina Black. Because I mean, Regina is, full disclosure, a very good friend of mine and just one of those writers I admire kind of more than anything else. Just everything she says is so thoughtful and so makes me think about things in a deeper way.
Yeah.
And then she wrote this book, August Lane, which is about a country music star who, a black country star who had this one big hit and now is back in town where he grew up. And he's confronted with the woman that he dated back then, who, by the way, he kind of stole the song from. Like, she's the
Yeah.
one who wrote the hit. And it's so good because it's like second chance. It's got all the pining and the yearning to it. It's got all the music stuff. So if you read Never Been Shipped and you like that aspect of it, this book also has a lot of that kind of questions about creativity and art. And there's a lot about forgiveness. Obviously they've been through a lot together, and it's just a beautiful book.
Okay, great. I'll add that to the show notes. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, if we go behind the scenes just a little bit, what is your favorite thing that you like to do when you finish a book? How do you celebrate or how do you treat yourself?
Mm. I mean, a lot of times I cry.
That's
Like,
great.
literally, when I finished Never Been Shipped, I remember it, like, viscerally, like, because I was sitting at the exact same desk that I'm sitting at right now, and I'm sorry you don't have video to see that, but my camera wasn't working. Um, but, yeah, I mean, I just, like, literally put my head down on the desk and just started crying.
Oh, oh, that's that
It's very, like,
cathartic, yeah, that cathartic
yeah,
emotion you were talking about a little bit earlier, that
yeah.
release. Yeah,
Well, a
yeah.
lot of it is usually I feel, I don't know if you're the same way, but I feel very single-minded and kind of obsessive when I'm working on something, and
Hmm.
so I usually spend a couple of days afterward kind of just in a daze that, like, I can do whatever I want. Like, I can watch a show, I can, like,
What do I do with myself now, right?
read a book for fun and just, like, chill out and just read. So I always had this, like, just I don't know, I'm almost, like, wandering around dazed, like, what do I do with myself?
Yeah, yeah, been there. All right. Well, before we go, can you give us a hint of what's up next?
Yeah, I am currently revising actually my next book, which comes out next summer, called In Every Possible Way, which is a book set in Ireland. And it's kind of I've been calling it like a before sunrise esque book where it's about two people who are just kind of walking through the city for this very short period of time for 2 days and like falling in love. But there's also a kind of a speculative element to it because she kind of is there in magical circumstances that she's not even totally sure if it's real.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, that sounds interesting. I love stories that take place in Ireland, so that's great.
Mhm.
I'll look forward to that one for sure. All right, folks, when this episode airs, Never Been Shipped will be out, so be sure to order your copy today. You can check out Alicia's website at aliciathompsonbooks.com. Alicia, what social media platform are you most active on?
Um, I'm almost exclusively on Instagram at this point, and then,
Okay,
like I said before, I do have a newsletter, which is aliciabooks.substack.com, and I
okay.
will post, like, once a week for
All
that.
right, great, great, great. And is your handle on Instagram Alicia Books?
Yes.
Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait for readers to get their hands on this amazing novel. It was so much fun, and it was so nice to meet you.
Thank you again, and it was nice to meet you.
Thank you. Many thanks to everyone listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Undercurrents of Romance. You can find more information about the show at traceydevlin.com/podcast. Undercurrents of Romance is a proud member of the Authors on the Air Global Radio Network. I'll be back soon with another great romantic read. In the meantime, enjoy the adventure, everyone.